Welcome to All the Things, the show where we talk about God, the Bible, and real life. I am Monique Duson.
And I am Krista Bontrager.
Also known as
Theology Mom.
Yes, that's
everywhere.
You. Just trying to make sure you were still the same person.
Well, and helping us this week and every week on the show is Bob, the professional button pusher who really needs 5 arms.
Yes.
And right there he is. And there's Abby monitoring our chat. No Emily tonight. She's away.
Do you see the empty chair?
Hello.
That's Emily's empty chair back there.
That's right.
Yes.
Well, she's with us in spirit.
Yes, that's her. And we are addressing all things related to God, real life, the Bible, from a historically Christian viewpoint.
And I loved how you explained it to the checker tonight while we were at Trader Joe's.
Yes.
He asked, like, so did you have any plans tonight? And Monique just nonchalantly says, oh, yes, we're having our own podcast.
I don't think I did it with an accent, but I did. Like, I want people to know.
And so she just let him know right there. And he was very interested.
Yes, and what was crazy was that he knew what we were going to be talking about.
I know.
And so let's talk about what we're going to be talking about.
Yeah, let's do the little rundown here.
Yes. So first off, we're going to be talking about this whole Area 51 thing. Well, I didn't know it was a thing.
I think I'm too old for it to show up in my Facebook feed, my social media feed. I haven't seen anything about it. But everyone in my life who's under the age of 30 seems to know about it.
The checker who was about 20 knew about it.
So it's some Facebook event about storming Area 51. It's really an internet joke, but we thought, hey, this would be a great opportunity to talk about
aliens
and government conspiracies
and Jesus. Somehow they probably all go together. Because
this is a show where we talk about all the things.
All the things. Yes.
That's right.
Okay, so we'll have aliens.
Yeah.
And we'll have Dr. Mark Clark.
Yes.
Who's an alien expert.
Well,
did I get that right?
He's an government intelligence expert.
Well, if the government's in aliens, I don't know. Okay, but he's going to be on. And that's exciting because I have always wondered if aliens really exist. Okay. And I don't know. Maybe if God made us, maybe he made somebody else too.
Oh, and our friends Rhyme His Song says, I hope...
what's going on there?
Wait a minute.
What is that?
Got our own alien. Well, at least he's wearing a necktie. He's properly dressed.
He's a fancy alien. Oh, wow. Well, hello? Hi. Hi. Would you like to pull up a chair and sit the whole show?
No.
Oh.
All right.
Well, that's rather unfortunate. So, yes, we will talk about Christians and...
So, Rhyme His Song says... they're more interested in talking about the Josh Harris than aliens, but maybe we'll get to that. So
I don't know who Josh Harris is.
Oh, we could talk about that, I guess.
Oh my gosh.
And our friend Cynthia Hampton is watching. Our friend Laura Hartley is watching. So everyone jump into the chat box and talk to us with your questions about Area 51 and aliens and UFOs. We're also going to be talking a little bit toward the end of the show about social justice.
Yeah. And giving, I think, some definition around it.
Yeah.
But it'll be interesting to see where it goes.
Yeah,
and what
where
happens.
that happens. And then we have the tweet of the week.
Yes.
So,
but before we get into all that,
yes,
let's talk a little bit about what happened yesterday. Was it yesterday? No, it was
a couple days ago.
Yeah, Thursday.
Here we are. We made a little video. We were at the Angels game.
Yes, whoop, Angels. Whoop, whoop. I raise my halo high. Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Because in our family, we do root for the Angels.
Yes, not the Dodgers. The Angels. Yes. And so we went to the Angel game.
Like 16 innings.
And that was crazy.
1:30 in the morning. We finally left at about 11:15, drove home. They were still playing, watched them on television for a while. And then we couldn't.
Yeah. And they played until like 1 something in the morning. 16 innings.
It was crazy.
It was a little out of control.
But we had so much fun.
It was a good time.
In fact, we got to take your nephews.
Yes.
Here you are.
Oh, I didn't know that we were playing this. Well, there's that. Yes. But I am that's Raiden. There it is. That is Raiden. He just turned 8.
Yes.
And so
we went for his birthday and his brother's birthdays, and we had a good time.
Yeah, it was a good time. We recorded our
promo video,
little promo shootout for that from there. Yes. And I'm feeling like I'm a newly transformed Angel fan because basically, if it's not dance, to me, it doesn't count as a sport. Dance is really the only
that's
sport.
been your thing.
Yeah,
that's right.
So I'm wearing my angel gear.
Yeah.
Yes. I had on my angel's hat, but then you couldn't see my face.
So we had to take that off.
Yeah.
3 minutes before we went on the air, and there's
I really wanted to.
hair panic.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yes. And then I had to go and try and do something with it, and it's still not right.
It's just
but
it's a headband now.
It is a headband, and you know, I couldn't go on the air with my hair just in its natural state. I feel like, you know, growing up, I always heard that Jesus had woolly hair. That there's a verse in the Bible maybe about Jesus and woolly hair. So I always can, you know, figure that I must be closely related to Jesus, because it is kind of woolly.
Well, he was.
I don't know.
Probably he was a Middle Eastern man, so you could be.
Yeah.
Aren't we all related?
We are.
We're all sort of cousins.
Kind of.
If you go back far enough.
You're just a cousin with the good hair.
I don't know. That's a matter of speaking. So.
The fact that I said good hair live is.
We'll get the letters.
We will. We will. I'm sure. I am sure. All right. Last week, though.
I'm glad that was your line and not mine.
That's okay.
Okay, so last week we did the show on women in ministry. So if people missed me stumbling through some of my life story, they can go catch the replay. Go catch all the notes, because I neglected to mention some of the resources. And so I've got, if you go to the show notes, which is theologymom.com/all the things, you can see the show notes there, and with some additional resources. People wanted to know my opinions on certain passages and how I deal with that. All that stuff's on my YouTube channel. So we didn't really deal with specific Bible verses, but kind of giving more of a big picture of things last week. So that was fun.
Yeah, it was. I was there. I mean,
you were there. I'm glad you were there. Since you were interviewing me.
I was there. But what I was trying to say was I also went to your YouTube channel to watch a couple of videos, which I normally don't do because I have you live and in person.
Yeah, I know. We have an ongoing thing about that.
We do.
She asked me a question. I said, I have a video about that on my channel. And then she's like, I don't want to go watch a video.
No.
I just want you to
tell me. You're live and in person. But you talked about the verse where it says like women should be silent.
There's a couple of verses to that effect.
Yeah.
So I have a video about each of them.
I'm rarely silent. I mean, if you know me. So I needed to make sure about, the things that Paul was talking about.
You weren't silent after dinner, though.
Listen here, people. Listen here. Some things should be discussed off air. Okay.
All right.
Back to reality.
Let's have some decorum and get Dr. Mark Clark on.
That used to be my favorite word when I was in high school. Decorum.
Decorum?
We used to say proper decorum.
Oh.
All the time.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, we're gonna be on our best behavior. Are you ready?
I am.
Because we're gonna have an intelligence expert on.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Let's get Dr. Mark Clark on.
Hi, how are you guys? Hi.
Hi. So glad to have you here. And we're there you are. You're on our monitor. I think it would be great before we get into our topic just to introduce you to our audience and let them know a little bit about your background and what you do and where you've been teaching and that sort of thing.
Sure. I served in the U.S. Marine Corps from 1973 to 1977. I started off in infantry, then nuclear security aboard ships, and then I developed an intrigue in military intelligence. And that's, in fact, it was about that time that I became a Christian while I was in the Marines, and it really intrigued me studying international politics. So I eventually went to, university after I graduated, or I got out of the Marine Corps, and went to University of Southern California, where I studied strategic studies. And some of the courses I took were, in addition to military theory, strategy, and things like that, I also studied intelligence analysis. I've been teaching at the California State University, San Bernardino for over 30 years now, and actually just a little over 30 years now. And one of the things I've been doing the last 12, 13 years is managing grants from the intelligence community to start an intelligence community center of academic excellence among 7 Southern California State universities. And it's been based on a number of grants with the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, the Defense Intelligence Agency, the National Science Foundation, and then as well, we did a little bit of work for about a year last year with IARPA, which is the Intelligence Advanced Research Project Activity. It's the intelligence community's version of DARPA, the agency that created the internet and does a lot of advanced military research. So that's my background.
Very cool. And I met you, Mark, about 20 years ago, if you can believe that. And you are a co-author of the book Lights in the Sky and Little Green Men. And you and I met when I was working on a video kind of based on that book. And you're connected with the ministry where I work full time, which is Reasons to Believe. And that's kind of how you and I got connected. But I think it's going to be fun to talk about some of these themes that, even though this book is a little bit older now, there are some themes that are always relevant and never seem to go away. So let's talk a little bit about this Facebook trend. I don't know, have you seen this on any of your social media feeds about the Area 51 event?
No, I haven't. I started doing a little bit of research into it this last week. I heard something about it. I think you mentioned something about it. And so I've been doing some reading. Time Magazine's got articles on it. CNN has done pieces. I've looked at the Facebook post. It's now, I think they have 1.9 million people who have committed to coming out to raid Area 51 in September.
Yeah, it started, here we have it on the screen. It started just as a Facebook event. And the title of the event was Storm Area 51. They can't stop all of us. And it's scheduled for 3 a.m. on Friday, September 20th, 2019. And if we go to the next graphic, we can see the event description, not that one. We're going to all meet up at the Area 51 Alien Center tourist attraction and coordinate our entry. If we, how do we say this word, Abby? I have to ask the teen. Naruto. I have to ask the teenager. Run. We can move faster than their bullets. Let's see them aliens. So from this that started out as a joke, like you said, there's over 1 million people who have clicked on, yeah, I'm attending. I'm going to the Facebook event. So now there's all kinds of things. Now, Mark, do you know what a Naruto run is?
I now do. I didn't know what it was until I read about this. In fact, I looked it up. There's a classic meme out now on this with Keanu Reeves doing the Naruto run, where his arms are behind him. The anime, the Japanese anime, and he's running towards
Not that one.
Not that one. No, that's not Japanese. There it is. Yep. Whatever.
Yeah, it's a famous Japanese anime.
Okay. I'm glad that's the first time I've seen that. So I've seen, Keanu Reeves' version of it, but not that one. So thank you.
So this is such
all very peculiar.
It is all very peculiar.
I'm just going to put it out there. I'm not,
Yeah.
But when we were at Trader Joe's tonight, Mark, the checker, who probably looked like he was about 20, he knew exactly what this was. I mean, it's very popular, I guess, with young people. So, and it has been given birth to some very fantastic memes. If people go on the internet.
So what does the Naruto run have to do with the Area 51?
I don't know. I think like the idea is that if you make yourself thin, that you run faster with your arms behind you.
Maybe dodge the bullets.
Dodge the bullets.
And they start shooting.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense, I guess.
In a peculiar sort of way.
Now, the whole thing is a big internet joke, but obviously, I think on some level, people are kind of, interested in, like extraterrestrial life and all of that. What do you think? Like, it is okay. I have questions about aliens myself. I'm just gonna put that out there. Is Area 51 a real place, and why so much hype and interest behind this place and aliens?
Well, there's a number of answers to that long question, but Area 51's been around for a number of years. It's called Nellis Test and Training Range. It's Nellis Air Force Base manages it. It's around an area, and you saw the picture of it that you displayed earlier. It was originally called Groom Lake. It's an old dry lake, and it's great for, you can see the area behind, see where they have the aircraft, landing facilities. it's a great area to test avionics. So for example, our U-2, not the band, but our U-2 high reconnaissance altitude plane was developed there. A number of highly advanced military technology, particularly aviation type technology, was tested there. And it's still going on. There's reports out of Las Vegas that you'll see daily workers flying from Las Vegas out to Groom Lake to work, because it's about 75 miles northwest of Las Vegas. It's just, and it's been, popularized by Independence Day, that movie, or the TV show Stargate, and a few others. The second part to that question that you asked, Monique, was, what about aliens? Well, originally the idea of aliens crashing started more with Roswell in 1947, which is down in New Mexico. And it didn't start out that way. It started out as some kind of disc, some kind of object. Later, it's evolved into, they got an alien, then they shipped them out, and then they put them in Area 51 because it's a secret research facility and no one could look at it. So it's gotten a life of its own. Maybe that's the best way to put it. But it is a real place. It's, like I said, part of the Nellis Air Force Test and developing range, training range. But there's 2 or 3 other places out by there on the way there. China Lake does a lot more work that it's not even talked about. And then, of course, Edwards Air Base out in the high desert in Southern California. Skunk Works, Lockheed Martin's advanced research project place called Skunk Works, is in that area, Palmdale. And so there's a lot of research into military stuff that goes on. And that goes from aviation to rockets to cruise missiles to electronic intelligence collection, electronic interference. So it's a lot of different things that go on there.
So Area 51 is a real place. It's a military, should I call it a base? Is it a military base?
Well, it's part of Nellis Air Force Base that manages it. So it would be part of the U.S. Air Force, correct?
Okay.
And I'm glad you clarified that it's in Nevada, because I thought it was in New Mexico. But that's Roswell.
That's Roswell, correct.
Okay. So the folklore then is that there was something that crashed in Roswell, and eventually that alien specimen made its way to Area 51. So the idea here is, with the Facebook event, is let's see those aliens. It's that the idea is that they're hiding aliens there, and that it's all super secretive. But really, what you're saying is that there's a lot of military facilities where they do secretive things, not just Area 51.
Absolutely. And actually, one of the early claims, long before the legend of the alien body being kept there, or aliens being kept there, it was that the U.S. military was reverse engineering from alien technology some of our advanced things. Why did we have the stealth fighter and the stealth bomber? But you talk to any responsible aerospace engineer, and they will let you know, look, just the stealth fighter, if you remember that, it looks very triangular. It's very angular, looks like delta wing. And the B-2 bomber is very smooth, rounded surfaces. That to anyone that's in aerospace demonstrates that it's just different ideas, different models. It's not coming from the same thing. It's not reverse engineering from a specific thing. The idea of stealth technology has been around for a very long time. In fact, in the 40s and 50s, they thought about creating aircraft made out of wood that could evade radar because it doesn't pick up anything, doesn't bounce signals back.
Now, Dr. Mark, between you and I, just you and I, have you ever been to Area 51?
I have not. I have not been to Area 51. However, I have at least 2 former students who worked there as aerospace engineers. Both worked or came and studied with us in national security studies at the time. One had worked there as an aerospace engineer. Another was an aerospace engineer working there. Recently, it turns out that I have former students that are at Nellis Air Force Base, and they're working in that area. They can't say specifically where, it's classified. And then, in fact, they've been encouraging other students to apply, or people to apply to a graduate program, and usually Air Force officers. So I haven't been there. I've met a number of people that have, and I've met actually someone from the Senate Armed Services Committee, was a Navy captain. He was a pilot, and he did research out there as well. And I've gotten the information from a variety of sources, reliable sources, about what goes on at Area 51.
So I think what I hear you say, I want to go back to something you said earlier, that what could have potentially been interpreted by some to be alien activity was probably looking at developmental stages of things like B-2 bomber or other things that are now used by the military, but those had to be developed and those had to be tested, and the shape of them resembles many reports that people get of UFOs. Is that kind of what you were saying?
Correct. A lot of, particularly if you looked at the stealth fighter when it first came out, the B-2 bomber, they looked out of this world. And so a lot of people, said, hey, look, that's reverse engineered from alien spacecraft.
Okay. So Annette has a question. She's watching us right now, and she's wanting to know, why bring up something that is meant to keep us safe? Maybe she has concerns about revealing military secrets, and I know that you're a very conscientious guy. So maybe explain about, why does the government have to be so secretive, and about classified information and what's allowed to be shared and what's not?
That's a very good question by her. And the only thing I do is I do not cite any classified work. I cite unclassified work. In fact, it's in my field. I purposely chose, after I had clearances when I was in the Marines, chose not to get a clearance so I could do and say what I needed to. 95% of the things that you need to know to work in this field, to advise. I've written papers that have been used by the Senate on ICBMs, on arms control. It's all unclassified. This is stuff that's publicly available, and it's stuff that other people are talking about. And in fact, the people that made it most famous were the very people who promoted this kind of UFO conspiracy, ufologists. They're the ones that have been promoting this. And so the data is all out there. And I just comment on that based on my knowledge, but not with any classified information, if that makes sense. So I protect that. Yeah.
So you said a ufologist?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That would be someone who studies UFOs.
Correct. Yeah. Probably the most famous UFOologist is J. Allen Hynek. He was a scientist that worked for a project called Blue Book for a number of years. And he wrote a book, I believe it was in 1972, on the UFO phenomena. But there's others. There's plenty of others. There's more respectable, more conspiracy, more pop. So there's all kinds of popular, I should say, a variety of people that are interested in the UFO phenomena. I would add too, Monique, for your interest, at least 50% of Americans, Canadians consistently poll as either believing in UFOs or believing the government knows more than what it's saying about UFOs. And that number has not changed over the years. It's a very high number of people that suspect either that there is alien life, or that the government's conspiring to cover up some of that information, or that they know someone that actually saw UFO phenomena.
So Project Blue Book was, maybe we could talk a little bit about that real quick. And I think it is important for people to know that there are people who really study this. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of weird things on the internet, but there are also experts and highly intelligent and educated people who document this activity and try to make sense of it and explain it and help us try to understand what some of the parameters are of this activity.
That's correct. So Project Blue Book was run by the Air Force, and actually it was preceded by two other projects, Grudge and Sign, and they lasted from 1947 to 1969. And out of over 17,000 sightings, they could explain all but about 700 of them. So other respected ufologists or people that research this, and I wouldn't say promoters of the idea, but people who are interested in it from a more kind of a credible, less promotional kind of approach, argued that probably 95 to 99% of all UFO phenomena can be explained by other natural explanations. And I think people who have a fascination with UFO interest tend to be very critical. They believe that, that's a conspiracy, you're hiding, and they're not satisfied that literally 99% of it can be explained by natural phenomena. But it's true. I've seen things that, when my wife and I were driving down to see her cousin in 2014, that looked like a UFO phenomenon. And it lasted about 10 minutes. It was a bright blue light in the sky. It seemed to hover over Orange County. It was stunning. And then it expanded to a huge ball, and then it disappeared. And I must mention that it was sort of hazy out that time. And actually, I think my brother-in-law is with us. And we turned in the radio, and of course, people were reporting UFOs. And next day, the Navy had announced, and the airports had verified that the U.S. Navy had been conducting a test of its sea-launched ballistic missile off the coast, and it was sending it downrange into Kwajalein Atoll, which is in the South Pacific. So from the direction we saw it, it would look like a bright ball in the sky, because it was going directly away from our line of sight, if that makes sense. And I've seen other things too. So it's not. There's a lot of good explanation. A lot of it's military, not all of it. Vast majority of it is instrument failures and things like that.
So you would say, just to sum up that point, you would say that a high percentage, I think you said 97 to 99% of what we think are UFO sightings have some kind of natural explanation, even if we don't necessarily know what they are, because military intelligence can't always tell us what they're doing.
Well, it's interesting. There is and I just want to add to it, because Project Blue Book ended in 1969, and a lot of people say, well, we need to continue this, and there's been interest. The Defense Intelligence Agency, at the request of Senator, at the time, he was, I think, lead Democrat in charge, Harry Reid of Nevada, had requested that the Defense Intelligence Agency research into these ideas. And it was a UFO and advanced technology and things like that. So they launched a program called Advanced Aviation Threat Intercept Program. And they funded for 5 years, $20 million of research into, is there real extraterrestrial phenomena? Is there cold fusion? There are a variety of exotic technologies. But it too was closed because nothing came of it. And the government has a lot of money, and they seem to spend a lot of money, but they don't have unlimited resources. So, but that one's recent. That ended in 2011. It started in 2007. And of course, there's a TV series on the History Channel about that right now. And the same kind of things. There's some scientists who are affiliated who think the government doesn't take it seriously enough. But in point of fact, nothing comes of this stuff. It's pretty interesting. All the interest, all that attention, nothing really substantial comes from it.
Well, that is a good point. Like, I hear you when you say that a lot of money is poured into it, but nothing really comes of it. Why spend so much money on something that really doesn't result in anything? If the majority, like 97 to 99% of UFO sightings are natural explanation, why are we pouring so much money into this research?
Again, it's still the fascination by a few, and there are, there's occasionally scientists, there's occasionally military people, occasionally government officials want people to look into it, and it seems to go in cycles. Okay, we've done it, but that was then. Let's go look at it now. We have better research tools, and that's part of the push. But yeah, it's never really led anywhere substantially, despite, in fact, that idea of re-engineering or reverse engineering alien technology seemed to have been a fad for a number of years, and that's gone away. I think now, as more people understand that stealth and stealth fighter and stealth bomber are kind of evolutionary approaches, not revolutionary approaches to technological development, they realize that money can be better spent on pursuing things that we know will work.
But one of my favorite Star Trek episodes is about reverse engineering 25th century technology. So you're kind of blowing that up for me right now.
Well, okay, that's still, you don't watch Star Trek or Star Trek Next Generation or anything like that with real scientists, right? Because they'll say space, there's no noise in space. Just my 16-year-old. Yeah, exactly. So you would say that most of these have a natural explanation, and I'm wondering, I'm assuming that even military people have UFO sightings, that they report those, that there's some kind of mechanism for that. Would that be a correct assumption? It's becoming increasingly so. There's a lot of stigma attached to reporting it for military people. So the U.S. Navy actually just started about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago now, trying to change its procedures for pilots in particular, who have claimed to have seen UFOs, either charging their strike formations or following their aircraft and taking off at light speed away from them. they want to destigmatize the reporting because they want to get a handle. What is this reporting? What's the frequency? Does it mean anything? And so that's a very recent phenomenon. And there's a number of, again, military people who would say they've seen it. Now, keep in mind, I think there's 100,000 airline flights a day, and very few sightings by a vast majority of those pilots. And yet we do have a few by some military, and particularly in the Navy. So that brings up an interesting thing, and something we talk about, that residual amount, that 1 to 5% that doesn't have a natural explanation. Ken Samples, Hugh Ross, and I do in our book the research, and Ken really pointed out some interesting things that led us to hypothesize that there are credible witnesses, people who are credible in their own right. They're not conspiracy theorists. They're not trying to make money. But they literally have credibility, and yet they've seen this phenomena. And how is it that they've seen this stuff? And the only explanation that we have found that makes sense, but UFO researchers never ask this question, is, and so you find it particularly with people who report contacts and abductions, they have an open door to the occult, or to, occultic behavior, occultic practices, sometimes even New Age stuff. And one of the recommendations I would like to have for the Navy, I'm not sure they can legally do it, but they require their pilots to have a psychological test all the time, before becoming a pilot, in training, and then once you're flying, and then repeat it afterwards. Why not ask the question, what kind of background do you have? What kind of exposure do you have to things? I think it will be hard because it touches on a spiritual practice, and so there might be religious protection, so it perhaps won't work. But I think it would be really intriguing to get a handle on that, because again, we've seen with those who have this open door to the occult, they definitely are far more likely to have a UFO encounter of whatever kind. There's multiple kinds: the first kind, the second kind, third, all the way up to the fifth kind. So we have a hypothesis. We hypothesize in the book that the data fits that this is a residual phenomena, but it's with people who have an open door to the occult. So they're credible witnesses to incredible phenomena, if that makes sense.
So of those, kind of, just to summarize that, like the 5% or so that don't seem to have a natural explanation, the hypothesis of the book that you co-wrote with Hugh Ross and Ken Samples is that there's something supernatural happening there. There's that these what we see as ships and alien beings, if people have contactee or abduction experiences, that there is enough credible evidence and credible reports from people who are in their right minds, not mentally ill, not on drugs, that there are people who see things and experience things that cannot be explained naturally. There's some kind of, we might call it, trans-dimensional experience, and the connection that you're making with that is that these people tend to also, the people who have these trans-dimensional experiences also have some kind of open door to the occult. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yes, that's correct. And there's a couple of parts to that. So when we talk about UFO phenomena, and for people who still think it's real, the problem is even the credible witnesses to incredible phenomena will report that they saw the ship travel at a straight line and then sharp right-hand turns that defy the laws of physics, or there will be a hypersonic speed but no sound attached to it. Radars will pick it up, but people won't see it. There's some really interesting phenomena going on here that is real but non-physical. And for people who might be questioning what is real but non-physical, I would just start with the human mind. Okay, so our brain is a physical organ, but our mind is an invisible, real, but an invisible thing. And we believe as Christians that spirits are both real but non-physical in the sense in which we operate and move in space-time. So, and we hypothesize these alien encounters, these, and particularly of the third kind, where it's personal contact with aliens or abductions or whatever, are not benign. They're very hostile to human beings. You heard the jokes about alien probing and all that. But essentially, they're not benign. And that indicates that whatever dimension we're dealing with, whatever spiritual beings we're dealing with, are not friendly to us. And so we hypothesize that they are demonic. That is, the realm of angels, angels who have fallen out of disobedience from God and are here to mess with us, and they're not helpful.
Okay. So I'm sorry, I'm just wrapping my brain around all of this. You've mentioned the different kinds of encounters. And I'm assuming there are 5 kinds. I think that's what I heard you say. But what is the third kind specifically? Like, you always hear about alien encounters of the third kind. So what is the third? Is that the most important kind? The most kind, like people normally, most frequent. That's the word I'm looking for.
No, actually, it's probably the least frequent, but it's the one most popular by Steven Spielberg's movie, Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
That was before Monique was born.
I was going to say, okay. I've never heard of this movie.
Oh, you haven't? Wow, it's life-changing. You've got to go see it. So Jan Hynek, who was a scientist, worked on Project Blue Book. He categorized 3 kinds. The first kind was a visual sighting within 500 feet. The second kind was some kind of physical effect, either electronic or physical damage. And the third kind was an actual contact by an alien being. And that was the movie that popularized it. So I would say the first kind is probably by far the most frequent. And a lot of UFO phenomena, that's why we call it ARA UFO, residual UFO, that which cannot be explained by natural phenomena. Because there's a lot of, 95 to 99% of the phenomena that people report, it has a natural explanation, just didn't occur to them, or they didn't have enough information.
So when you talk about an alien encounter or abduction experience, I think it's important for us to really understand that, all joking aside and all the internet memes and all of this, that people who have these experiences, by and large, many of them get highly traumatized, that this is not a pleasant experience, and they are often not the same after they have these encounters, and it is damaging to them, sometimes physically, emotionally, psychologically, and this is really not, to me, like, going down this path is it's sad when you meet some of these people, because if they have had an actual contactee or abduction experience, not one where they just saw a UFO and the first kind, but they were really engaged with aliens, they can be quite traumatized by it.
I'm glad you brought that up, Krista, because I don't think, the Facebook memes all aside, and it's, it started as a prank, and it's probably still mostly a prank, but this is serious business. When you deal with spiritual things, how do people get to open doors to the occult? One of the things that we've observed and seen and talked about in the book is that it can happen fairly innocently by people going to seances, playing with Ouija boards. I have a friend at church who, she went to a levitation when she was in high school. She actually went to like a sleepover, and they tried to levitate a girl, and it scared what out of them, because they actually did. And this phenomena is not benign, as I said, and by which I mean to say hostile. And I'm glad you brought that up, because people who have reported abductions or contacts usually do not fare well afterwards. Their life is permanently changed.
Yeah. And I think that when we think about alien encounters, it's important to think about them from, I think, a distinctly Christian worldview. And that's kind of what we're trying to get to here, of that the spirit realm is real, first of all, that the natural world is not all that there is. That we don't believe in a world like Carl Sagan, that the natural world is all there is and all there was and all there ever will be. We believe that, yes, there's the natural world, but there's also the spirit realm. And that these are examples. The hypothesis that Dr. Clark and his co-authors are putting forth is that that true UFO things, not things that have natural explanations, which we covered, extensively, but this residual, that these are examples of these transdimensional or demons coming into the physical world. and kind of making a display of power. And this is an important thing to think and soberly about, and to understand that when people say, I have a contactee experience or something, they may have been damaged by that. They may have been hard for them, and they may not be crazy.
Yeah.
It might have really happened to them. Incredible people have had weird experiences at times.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think in the book too, there's a section that we have in there for people who have had this experience. And if you're a believer, or you know people who are believers and you want to help someone with this, because again, over 50% believe something like this, there's a section in there that includes how can you close that door, that open door to the occult, and open up your life to the genuine power of the transcendent God. The real spiritual power, the good power, the power that created the entire physical cosmos, his kingdom, us, and all the good things.
That's so good. So, Mark, I'm sure you probably don't recommend people attend the Facebook group to storm Area 51. That could end bad for them.
It's funny, as I look today, and even the Airbnbs and the hotels are not filled up yet. So I don't think they're booking it up. I think it's still a joke. But I understand that one of the three that started this, I think it's Robert Maddy, if I'm not mistaken. I think he's come out and said he's apologized. He's trying to, make sure the government doesn't, overly worry. This is a joke.
Yeah.
But he's now talking about making it a concert. So if I had to guess, the most we'd ever see go out there is 200 people. But again, September, it's going to be in the 90s, maybe
pretty warm.
It's gonna be hot, and there's no place to stay. There's not many places, and there's nothing to eat, and it's just cactus and deadly snakes, by the way, out there. So be careful.
No. Monique won't be there.
Nope.
Okay.
Yeah, nope. So a question I have is, if people do show up there, would they start shooting at them? Would they actually take force to stop them? Would they?
I don't think. No, I don't think so. I think that's not the first response. Obviously, they're prepped. The U.S. Air Force is already alerted the public that we take our defense seriously. We'll pursue it. My guess is that if they detect that this is going to be a problem, they will have a lot of people out there to support them and catch people trying to get close to the Groom Lake, the Nellis Air Force Test Range. It's unlikely, although people report actually seeing some of the fantastic aircraft that are in the high technology going on. It's really extremely rare, and there's going to be no testing going on during that time. So you're just going to waste your time.
They should put a fake UFO there or something and kind of act like they're hiding it or something, just to get a good show. I don't know.
You know what? That would be good. I think that's a good idea, Robert. You got a future in this.
I think one more question I had is, do you think that there will be, if people, you ask a question. I want to think about my question some more.
Well, okay, so the question
I know you have something.
Okay, now, yes, there are other people that are watching, but Dr. Mark, just between you and me, do you really think that aliens exist? I know you can't really say, but blink once. if you think, just there's no blink. There's no blink. No. All right. Now, here's a real question.
Well, except for that one.
That's a special situation. Normally, I feel like when I hear about UFO sightings or see things on TV, it's always one person, that person's alone. Can groups of people be abducted? Can groups of people experience this? Or, I'm just wondering.
Well, and like I said, just that example of the submarine launch, sea launch ballistic missile test that I saw, many people saw it and they reported it, but that had a natural explanation. And there are a number of reports. There's a Phoenix Lights, I think it was, and it was probably 12 years ago or something like that. A number of people saw something going on and they couldn't explain it. So it can happen to large areas, but again, the UFO phenomenon is just strange. It either has physical effects and no visual effects, or it has visual effects and defies the laws of physics. It doesn't leave trails. It lands or crashes, but there's no recovered objects. And the militaries can't get everywhere and clean up all this stuff that fast. It's just not possible. So yes, it's mostly, the vast majority are people out in lonely streets by themselves in the countryside, but on occasion it can affect larger groups of people.
Okay.
That's just further proof to me that you don't need to go out to the country. You never get abducted in a mall. I've never seen anybody get abducted going to Bath and Body Works.
I think you're going to have more chance of a real abduction at a mall than you are out in the wilderness. Let me put it that way.
All right. Final question, Mark. Yes. I know that the naysayers are going to write to me and say, well, he's on the take. He was paid. He gets paid to deny anything is going on. So how would you address that concern?
My pocketbook doesn't show it. I've done a lot of research. I've done a lot of things. I actually, make a pretty good living working as a professor. I'm retired now, but I'm on an early retirement plan. But no, I've, in fact, even with the book that I co-authored with Hugh Ross and Ken Samples, I had a small stipend up front, but I didn't take any royalties because I had no vested interest in making money off of this subject. To me, in fact, I feel bad that there are those who are making money off promoting these fantasies. And that's the part that really disturbs me, that it can cause a fascination for people who don't need to be fascinated with something that's dangerous. Yeah. So that's my answer.
All right. Very good. Well, thank you, Mark. I really appreciate you doing this.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies. Right. Have a good evening.
All right. Thanks, Mark.
Bye.
Okay. That was fun.
That was.
Did you learn some things?
I did.
Okay.
I did. But I loved the fact that he talked about levitation.
Oh, that was your favorite part after all that?
Well, because I feel like people don't talk about levitation.
Okay.
And living in South Africa and the spiritual dynamics there, levitation is real. And I was just like, what? You know about levitation with the aliens too? Yeah, I don't know. It was, sorry. That was.
So what is the answer to the question, should we believe in UFOs? What did you get?
No. I got the big no. He didn't blink when I said, it's just between you and me. We don't have to tell anybody else. And he said, no blink. So no, but I do think that the stand of it being something spiritual, I found that to be a bit fascinating in some ways. I'm like, wow, like I never would have thought like, oh, this could be because I played with a Ouija board or because I attempted to levitate or, did something.
What is it about like fifth grade girl slumber parties and introducing to the paranormal and the occult? Like, what is that?
I don't know, because in my fifth grade slumber parties, none of my friends were doing anything paranormal.
Oh, really?
No.
Oh, no, that was so common.
Oh, no.
The Ouija board, I would always go hide.
No.
No. But so 2 points to remember from what Mark said, I think we could boil it down, is most UFO sightings have a natural explanation.
Yes.
Those that don't, there's a small percentage that are credible, that don't have a natural explanation, that seem to be transdimensional.
Like 1 to 3%.
Yeah, probably demonic.
Yeah.
And if you run into somebody who's had an encounter or a contactee experience, that person probably is going to need some healing and to redirect them to the real transforming power of Jesus Christ. So hopefully that helps some people. I found it interesting. I like talking to Mark. He kind of breaks down all the conspiracy theories.
Well, there's that. I just never knew that people really wanted to storm Area 51 or that Area 51 was so close.
We don't endorse that here at all the things.
No.
Don't do that.
Don't go to some Air Force base. No. And don't run like that. That is a mess. That is just a mess. Anyway, on to the next thing, which I am excited about.
All right.
Social justice.
Let's talk about social justice.
Yes.
So this is not going to be an exhaustively complete conversation.
No, which is good. I think that
it's going to be a
small nugget is good. And I don't even know that it's all social justice-y. As some people might want or expect, but you saw a tweet.
We saw a tweet, so let's get the tweet up there.
Social justice is not extra. Social justice is the gospel.
Yes, and I think this was from the president of Union Seminary, but I could be wrong about that. but Union Seminary is a seminary back east, a little bit more on the, I would characterize them on the progressive end of the theological spectrum. And so this tweet jumped out at me, and I drive Monique crazy all the time, like practically every day, screen capping tweets and sending them to her.
There's that.
Asking her opinion about things.
Well,
Yeah. What is this?
Okay, before we even get into the segment or, about the topic, I find it interesting that how many seminaries are creating social justice and theology programs.
Yeah.
Like you can get a master's. It's almost, or it is interdisciplinary, social justice and theology, which to me makes me assume that the two are one, that they go together.
Yeah.
That the gospel really is a message of social justice.
Yeah. Or that social justice is an extension of the gospel somehow.
Yeah.
So I always, me, I always drive you crazy with, well, how is this term being defined? That's always my first question.
Yes. Your middle name should be Webster.
Yes.
Like the dictionary.
So importance of definition. So let's throw the tweet up there one more time so we can get that in our minds as we're talking about it. Social justice is not extra. Social justice is the gospel! ! I think it's very important. So my first question is to think about two terms that we need to define. One is social justice and one is the gospel.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start with the gospel. What is the gospel? So it's really easy to find that definition. If we go up to 1 Corinthians 15, it says, now, brothers and sisters, the Apostle Paul says, I want to remind you of the gospel I preached to you, which you received and on which you have taken your stand. By this gospel, you are saved. And that word gospel is euangelion in Greek, and it means good news. This good news. This is how you are saved. Go back.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Can you go back one?
I'm going back one. There we go.
There we go. If you hold firmly to the word I preached to you, otherwise you have believed in vain. So what this verse tells me in the 1 Corinthians 15 is that there's something that you must believe in order to be saved.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have an incorrect belief, you will have believed in vain.
Yes.
You will not be saved. And so this tells me that belief is important. It is the necessary condition for salvation, but not any old belief will do.
Yes. There is something specific I
have
should
to have a
believing
particular
in.
belief in something in order to be saved. Okay, so let's continue with Paul's remarks here. He says, for what I received, I passed on to you as of first importance. Now, I want to say something about this. This phraseology here, this is the second time he said this, of receiving and passing. That's a technical term in ancient Judaism for receiving a tradition or receiving a teaching or receiving the teaching plus the tradition of the practice around the teaching. And he's saying, I received this and now I'm passing it on to you. Mm-hmm. So you have to kind of understand a little bit about oral cultures and how information was preserved through stories, and that was part of their cultural identity. So he's saying, I'm giving you something. I'm passing on that thing that I have received. So this is like a way of saying, I'm giving you the official information. Mm. This is the what you must believe. This is the official statement. This is like our doctrinal statement that we'd have today. I'm passing on that which I have received. And then the second thing he says in that statement is that it's of first importance. That tells me it's the most important thing I have to know about the gospel, okay? It's not of second importance, third importance. It's first importance. All right, so again, we're at necessary conditions. Here's the gospel, that Christ died for our sins according to the scriptures, that he was buried, that he was raised on the third day according to the scriptures, and that he appeared. He appeared to people after he rose from the dead, including 500 people at the same time. most of whom are still alive. Okay. It's almost as if Paul's inviting them, hey, you could go interview this person. You could ask them.
Mm-hmm.
They're probably still alive. You could go find out for yourself. But I want you to notice how the gospel is about historical events. It's not about your testimony. Your testimony in coming to faith is not the gospel. Good works are not the gospel. The gospel is believing that Jesus came, that he was born of the Virgin, that he lived, that he died on a cross, and that he was buried, and that he rose again. And that those acts in history have eternal importance. Okay, that's the gospel. That because he lived, we will live again. Even though he died, he rose. Even though we will die, we will rise again. This is the hope of Christianity. This is the good news. It's a historical event with a theological or a spiritual implication. That is the gospel.
I love that. And I love how you can bring the historical component out and show like this is exactly what this is. Now, when you see a tweet like that says social justice is the gospel, why is it so important to delineate exactly what's happening here? That's the right word, right? Yeah. Okay. I'm just making sure. Yeah. I have a bunch of words running through my head. Why is it so important to really thread that out? I guess what's the danger in not threading it out and leaving it as is?
Well, I think there's a lot of confusion that I see in the church today about what the gospel is and things that are being called the gospel, which are not the gospel. And so, for example, if we could go to the graphic, no, I don't have a graphic for this. Never mind. There is a very common theme that I see a lot of churches saying. It's on t-shirts, it's on bumper stickers, it's on church websites, that kind of their purpose or their vision statement is love God and love people.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what is put forth by many today as the gospel. But that's not the gospel. Loving God and loving others is not the gospel. That is actually a summary of the Old Testament law. Jesus asks a few times, like, what is the law? How do you summarize the law? What is the law? And it's to love my neighbor as myself and love the Lord with all my heart, soul, mind, and strength. But that is law. That's a summary of the Mosaic law. And it's not the gospel. It's not the good news. The gospel is the life, burial, death, and resurrection of Jesus. And that because he lives, we will live again. His death means that we have forgiveness of sins. We are placing our faith, hope, and trust in that physical act that happened in history. That's what will save me. That is my hope. That is the hope that is real, okay? But that's not dependent on the law. The law is love God and love others. That's a summary of the Mosaic law. Now, when Jesus comes, it says he's giving us a new commandment, which is actually an old commandment, is what it says in 1 John. Mm-hmm. And that is to love God. But notice it's a commandment. It's a law. It's not what saves us. We obey the law after we're saved. We do it out of gratitude for what God has done for us through the gospel. But we can't get the law and the gospel mixed up, because then it seems like we're doing things to get saved. Mm-hmm. And this is my problem with saying social justice is the gospel, because social justice is a set of ideas. It's a set of demands. It's a set of moral obligations. It's laws. It's not good news. The good news is what saves us. It's not doing things. It's receiving forgiveness. It's believing in Jesus. It's social justice is a concept of doing things and having moral obligations. It's a form of law, if you will. So
okay, I'm following you, and
Okay.
you know your girl is pro social justice-y,
Yes.
So does that mean that social justice is wrong? Like,
Yeah.
is it wrong then to enter into that space? Because, yeah, I'm
So
thrown by it a little
let's
bit.
get another definition on the table. Let's define social justice.
Yes.
Okay, so I got a definition here. Boom, there it is. This we did a kind of a search this morning. There's a lot of definitions of social justice out there, and I have to say that if you talk to someone and they bring up the term social justice, the first thing you should do is ask them, what do you mean by that? Define your term. Because often what it means in our culture and the popular level is you have something that I want and it's unjust. And
that's
come on now.
I really struggle with that one.
All right, well, lay it on me.
I do. Well, let's look at one of the definitions.
All right, so this is one we picked because Monique felt that this one kind of accurately summarized the cultural understanding of social justice. Equal access to wealth, opportunities, and privileges within a society. It's very similar to the United Nations definition, which is the other one we almost picked, but very similar to that. The UN definition was just a little longer.
Yeah.
So notice there that it's equal access to wealth, opportunity, and privileges. Those are the big issues. And so when we think about that, the second question that immediately comes to my mind after definition is how? How will this be accomplished? How am I going to provide or create a society where there's equal access to wealth, opportunities, and privileges? How will that be accomplished? Well, I'm going to need a lot of laws. It's going to be a lot of things that are moral obligations that I'm going to be told that I must do. That's law. That's not gospel. So if we go back to the tweet, my contention is that no, social justice is not the gospel, and the gospel is not social justice because it's mixing law and gospel. So now Monique's going to undress me here.
I can see it, I think. I just am. I just have to let it marinate on my brainstem, I guess, because there is.
So what's the thing you're wrestling with?
I wrestle with the idea that Christ died one for all, that we would all have equal access to the Father, that we would all have equal opportunity, to the Father.
Yeah.
Yes. And when I look at things like social justice and thinking that, like, education, when I think about like Brown versus the Board of Education and things like that, people fighting for that equal opportunity, I'm just like, but isn't that the same? Like, aren't we saying like people should have the equal opportunity, the equal access? Or maybe it just feels wrong when I hear people say, well, the church shouldn't talk about social justice. That shouldn't be our stand. And then I see things like social justice is the gospel, like standing up for social justice is gospel. Yes, I understand that no, the gospel is the message of Jesus Christ. I do, agree with that. But I don't know. It just leads me down this dark path of, well, why isn't the church like stepping up to say like, yes, there are things that should be overturned or equal, and this is probably a long story that isn't even fit for all of this, but I don't know. There's something about decoupling social justice from Christianity or from the gospel that really like just kind of gets under me.
I think that maybe you could make the argument, and I've thought about this, and we're just trying this on right now in front of a few thousand of our closest friends.
There it is. Hi, friends. Welcome to our home life.
I think that the issue of equality is not a gospel issue as much as it's connected to the image of God. It's a creation issue. And that when we mix up not just law and gospel, but when we mix up salvation and creation, that I think that it's important to keep those things separate. Because the good news, it says in Luke chapter 2, the good news in a very famous Christmas story, the angels tell the shepherds, this good news shall be for all the people. It is an equal opportunity message. Mm-hmm. It's for the rich and for the poor. It's for the Jew and it's for the Gentile. It's an equal opportunity, but it's not an equal outcome because not everyone will choose Jesus. So unless you're a universalist, which is a heresy.
Yeah, I'm not a universalist.
So then that would be an equal outcome. Everyone gets the same outcome. Everyone gets heaven. Mm-hmm. Even the gospel is an equal opportunity. It's an equal opportunity message in that all are invited. But we must, as individuals, respond to that invitation. Right? We can't, we don't have outcomes that are equal. There's a free will ish response that's required.
Yes.
And we can talk about the nature of free will and predestination. I was a Calvinist for 12 years, so I know what I'm saying here. But there's a free will aspect. There's an aspect of I have to make an individual stand of faith. So I think that it's important for us to understand that even in outcomes, there aren't even equal outcomes even in our faith, even in the gospel. Now, as an image of God issue for the issue of equality and equal treatment, that's more of, I think, maybe hooked to the question of all humans being created with value, dignity, and worth. And as such, they deserve certain kind of a treatment. But even that is more of a law issue. I mean, if you look in the Mosaic law, there's laws and moral obligations about how to treat the poor, how to have equal weights and measures, how to administer justice, how to administer money, how to make sure that people are treated fairly, and God's laws explain all of that. But none of those things save us.
Yes.
And so that is my beef with the tweet of, if we can go back to the tweet for a minute, is the equal, like it's, I can't get to a place theologically where I can say social justice is the gospel, because immediately what I see with that is mixing law and gospel. And to me, just theologically, I can't get there. But that's not to say we don't have moral obligations to help the poor. The question is how do we get there? And are we trying to advocate for equal opportunities or equal outcomes? And what does God's law have to say about that? Because there's only two laws in the world. There's God's law.
And there's the laws that we make up.
There's the laws we make up. And sometimes we like our own laws better.
Yeah.
And so we have to think about, I think we have to reflect more deeply on God's laws. And I'm going to be starting, hopefully I'm going to get some videos up this week of starting a teaching series on my YouTube channel about the law, because I see this issue of social justice being intimately connected to having a proper view of the law. Okay. So I don't know. Is this helping anyone?
I think it was helpful.
Tell me on the chat box.
It was helpful for me. I can see how social justice is not the gospel. It is not the gospel, like big T, big G. Mm-hmm. But I do believe that it is an important work. And I do believe that we can fight for the dignity, value, and worth of others as we do that, as people are, created in the image of God.
I think the difficulty, though, with so many of the definitions of the social gospel or social justice, it used to be called the social gospel 100 years ago, but now it's called social justice. I think that's part of my difficulty with it is that it really is I stumble over the words, the term, because it's not a biblical term. There's no term in the Bible of social justice. It's a man-made term that we are then taking from the world and trying to put on Scripture, and then telling Christians they have a moral obligation to do this. But we're taking a worldly term and a worldly definition and then creating an ought, creating a moral obligation. If Krista ruled the world, Christians would have a thoughtful conversation and start with Scripture and God's law and develop a theology of how to help the poor based on Scripture first, and be in that conversation with each other and build something solid from Scripture first, rather than importing a foreign idea and then acting like Christians have a moral obligation to do this.
I agree. I do see that we do adopt terms and things like that, but and then put that in the church. However, and I do wish that we would sit and talk about like, hey, this is what our moral obligation is, because I do believe that Scripture does call us to certain things that we either shy away from, we don't want to talk about, we either don't know how, or, whatever. But to me, when I look at people who are engaged in social justice, I look and I say, wow, at least they're doing something. At times I look at the church, and I mean, I know a few organizations locally here who are doing something, but that's been recent. And by and large, I'm like, I don't really know what the church is doing. How are we standing for X, Y, and Z? And again, I feel like that's a much longer conversation, but I just am so unclear as to how the church wants to sit and talk about it. Or do we? Or is that not even the church's position? Or the church, historically, would the church not even engage in this? How would the church respond to culture? Or is it that we have our own culture and we put that forward? I'm really wondering what we should do and how we should do it. But yeah.
I think it's a very important question. There's a classic book. I'm trying to remember. I think it's by Reinhold Niebuhr, which was it's kind of a 4 views book on our relationship. I think it's called Christ and Culture. And it kind of outlines some of those answers to those questions of how does historic Christianity interact with the culture? And there are different models for that. And so Rhyme His Songs wants to talk about the Good Samaritan. Was the Good Samaritan a social justice warrior? Of course, that is a favorite passage of people who are in the social justice area. My personal view on that is that it's a story of what God expects us to do as individuals based on our free will. It's a story that it calls us to helping people and extending kindness to them and going the extra mile to even spend our money. If you've ever given help to somebody in need, help to somebody who really needed financial help, that there's things to be thought about from a Christian perspective of what God calls us to. But I noticed that in the parable of the Good Samaritan, it's an individual, it's not a government, it's not a tax, it's a free will contribution. And I think that is part of God's kingdom program for how to help the poor, is that he puts it in the hands of the individuals, not the government, to do that. And so that is kind of my take on Jesus's approach to helping the poor, is the kingdom of God will be subversive no matter where it goes. It will subvert the worst caste system. It will subvert the ugliest monarchy system of government. All governments will be undermined by the love that Jesus's disciples show one another and help one another and help to provide for each other's needs. But it's of our own free will, and it's done as individuals, not the government. So that is kind of my take on the Good Samaritan.
And we've had a lot of discussion about coercion and coercive techniques, I'll call them that, used by the government. And I guess my standpoint still is, or my question still is, like, would people's free will be enough? What do you do with the poor? These are the questions that I kind of wrestle with. Oh, wait. Sorry. We have some comments.
No, it's good. I was just reading through them. They're kind of back and forth with each other.
Yeah.
Good. I found somebody to agree with me.
There's a couple. I agree with what was just said. Do we go Bonhoeffer or not? Good point.
Yeah.
I agree. Krista, key is free will.
I just think that there's only two ways you can get money from someone, is coercion or free will.
Mm-hmm.
There's only two options. Taxes is a form of coercion because you're going to go to jail if you don't pay your taxes. So there's only two ways. And I think that in the kingdom of God, the program that he's laid down is that his people are going to be judged according to how they treat others. And that part of that treatment of others is helping the sick, helping the poor, visiting people in prison. But that's for God to put the judgment on his people. The part of the answer to why is there so much pain, evil, and suffering in the world, part of the answer to that is that because Christians are not taking their job seriously to push back evil, pain, and suffering. And so, it's part of our job as Christians to alleviate as much pain and suffering that's unnecessary that we're able to. But that's a free will choice of God's people, and we will be judged accordingly. But our system is so messed up because of government intrusion and control and coercion that now we're in a system where we just want more coercion, and then we're going to baptize Jesus into that. That's my how I see it, and my understanding of the scriptures of how to help the poor is that's our job as Christians.
And I completely believe that. What I guess where the rubber meets the road for me is, if I saw Christians doing that, I think I could jump on board with it. If I really was there and was like, oh my gosh, look, look at all of the impact that we're making. I see us, and I'm not saying that Christians aren't. I'm just wondering, how do we make such a huge impact? Is there a way that we can make such a huge impact that we wouldn't need that? Or if the government were to step away today, because what I'm learning is, in our conversations, historically, this is the law that God set up. This is how he historically wanted things to run, and then we ran amok with it. But if it were according to the historic principles and precedent, would the hearts of man be so inclined to help the poor?
I think that's one of the great conundrums of the Old Testament, to be honest with you. That God set up these laws, he set up provisions for the poor, but human hearts were hard and they didn't help the poor. But notice that God's solution to that wasn't more government. It was a judgment against the people. And I think that I don't see that shifting in the new covenant. I don't see that system shifting. And it's gone to Jesus wants us to be generous. I mean, part of another aspect of the good news, and I skipped this scripture, is Luke chapter 7. It's in the ministry of Jesus, and the disciples of John the Baptist come to him and ask him, who are you, Jesus? And at that very time, Jesus had cured many who had diseases, sicknesses, and evil spirits, and gave sight to many who were blind. So he replied to the messengers, "Go back and report to John what you have seen and heard. The blind receive sight, the lame walk, those with leprosy are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the good news," this is the same word as the gospel. I looked it up in Greek today before I put this up here, is proclaimed to the poor. Blessed is anyone who does not stumble on account of me. And I want to notice what the good works are here. It's for the purpose of having the kingdom of God intervene into the physical world. That Jesus comes, and his evangelism strategy is to go out and train and send out his disciples to turn back the works of the enemy, if you will. The diseases, raising the dead, casting out evil spirits, and proclaiming the gospel, which is his life, burial, resurrection, that is the gospel. And he's telling them, go tell them the good news, that it's for everyone. It's for the poor. It's for the rich. It's for the Jew. It's for the Gentile. It's for everyone. This shall be good news for all the people. That is the gospel. But he doesn't come along and say, here's a new system of government I give to you. Here's a new system of taxation that I give to you to help alleviate all the suffering of the poor. Rather, he sets up the church and he says, here's what you should be doing. Casting out spirits, praying for the sick, bringing the power of God to intervene in that person's life. And as hearts are changed, as lives are transformed, that will have a ripple effect and transform culture. That's my best understanding of how God goes about it. And I could be completely wrong. I mean, that's where I'm at in my journey, and trying to think those things through. So,
all right. Well, it's something to chew on. It is definitely something for me to chew on.
And it's a hard issue, but we're having these conversations in our culture. Hopefully we've said some things, asked some questions that'll make some people think and have some answers, because the emerging generation is looking to us and saying, how does this all work? How do your beliefs in Jesus connect to real life?
That is the question.
Yeah.
That's the question. And I even think that people who are questioning social justice and wondering why the church isn't speaking up more or doing more, quote unquote, I think that's the real question. How does Jesus connect to the real world? How does he connect to the pain? How does he connect to the inequalities? How does he connect to things that are unjust? And I like what you said about bringing the kingdom near, like intervening with the kingdom. That is our responsibility. But
that part is clear. Now, if you want to make the case that we're not doing that, I'll jump on your side any day.
Yeah.
I don't think we're doing that well.
Yeah.
We don't know how to bring the kingdom near very well. I don't know if it's true, and you and I have talked about this off air, but I don't know if it's true that the church isn't doing a lot. I just have a tendency to think maybe you're not looking in the right places. I actually think Christians are pretty mobilized these days and are doing so much more than I've ever seen them do at any time in history. And I actually think really good things are happening, but maybe I'm just looking at the glass half full. So
you know me, my glass is always a third empty. No. I think that's a good way to summarize it, though, looking at how we are bringing the kingdom near.
Yeah.
And what is kingdom
Yeah.
What is that?
Well, we're
space?
gonna have a show coming up soon talking about that. So it'll be a good continuation of the
That will be.
conversation.
That'll be.
But
really
yeah,
good.
let us know your thoughts about social justice. I've just kind of let it roll here. It's a hard conversation. This has been a lot that Monique and I have talked through the last year or so.
Yeah,
So.
I agree with Rhyme's song, spirit-led versus the mob screaming about what somebody else ought to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, it's time for the tweet of the week.
Tweet of the week.
Oh, what happened?
Oh, no.
Are we still on? There we go.
Oh, wow.
The tweet of the week.
There's that. There is. I wasn't expecting that, but there it is. There it is.
Surprised our socks off there.
Yes.
Mr. Button Pusher.
I don't know what happened with that glitch there, but
All right. That's okay. It's the first time. He was trying to... It happened on the air. Hopefully
There it is.
everyone enjoyed that.
That's hilarious.
Okay.
Okay, so the tweet of the week this week is...
Here it is. Oh, it's so cute.
Yes.
Orlando Pride soccer player meets one-handed boy. It took him a minute to realize, wow, we've got the same arms. And then he just giggled. I loved that. I was so cute. I thought, I saw a video where she met him later and the same thing happened. And it was so cute. But I guess for me, what came to me right when I saw that is, and we were talking about this a few minutes ago, is the issue of kindness.
Mm-hmm.
Kindness is a fruit of the Holy Spirit.
Yes.
And in Galatians chapter 5, it talks about kindness as being an evidence for who we are in Jesus. It's an evidence of our identity. It's an evidence that Jesus really lives in us, that we are a temple of the Holy Spirit. He lives in us. But you know what? Christians are not always known as being the kindest people on the earth. We really should be. We should be known as kind people. And I just look at this act and I think that's just such human kindness for this professional soccer player to stop, see this little boy, give him a little bump, make him smile, make his day. And that is just a very simple act.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to encourage everyone, be kind.
Yes.
This week, my friend went through the drive-through. She frequents a certain drive-through restaurant a lot, and she's going through a lot, and she's kind of having some difficult moments in her life. And the drive-through clerk noticed that she was having some difficult moments, reached through the drive-through window and gave her a hug.
Oh, wow.
That's some kindness.
That is.
Let's be kind
Yes.
and not have road rage. So,
Yeah.
So what did you think of when you saw that?
I
Because
mean,
you had a different take.
I did, and I'm trying to remember exactly what my take was. Let me be honest. One of the things that I saw was their differentness, or the
same kind of different.
Yeah, they were the same kind of different, and how that connected them. And so many times I think that we say, well, you're different than me. You're different than me. Stay away. But in a lot of aspects, we're all the same kind of different. And we should allow our differences to really bring us together.
Kind of like Paul says about the body of Christ in 1 Corinthians 12, that we're all different, but we all need each other.
Yeah.
And to notice, it's okay to notice each other's differentness.
Yeah.
If you will.
And to celebrate it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But to know that we're one in Christ. Hey, Monique.
Yeah.
Did you know you're black?
Nope. Every day. Every day. And I celebrate it. I'm not going to lie.
See, I noticed.
Yes. But, and we'll talk about this on another show too. And I know we need to wrap up. But we are different. Like, we are different in that you're white and I'm black, but there is really just one race of people, the human race.
Yeah.
And I can't wait for us to talk about that on the show.
And the new race that Christ created in him, talks about in Ephesians 2, the new man is what it's called, but it might be translated like a new race, a new humanity.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And even in our being different, we each face unique struggles.
Yeah.
And we can come and sit around a cup of tea and talk about that. I like that.
Very good. I love the
All
tweet
right.
of the week.
Yes. It was nice.
And the
good one.
And the over the top intro.
Yeah, that was an intro for you.
Next week to see it again.
All right.
There it is.
I'd like to thank all of our staff, including the puppet, for coming on board and helping us out.
It takes a lot of work to
There's Abby.
get a puppet. Whoa.
This is our life. This
can't.
is actually pretty close
This
to real
is-
life.
This
for
is
us.
real life for us. You know. All right.
This is our family.
It's time
be
to
sure-
say goodbye.
I know. Be
It-
sure
it
to
really is.
check out the show notes. Go on my website, theologymom.com/ all the things,
Yeah.
and see extra resources
Or a
and
puppet.
and other resources, links.
Yeah.
To if you want to get in touch with one of our previous guests, I'll always include that there. So the show notes are there for you.
Feel free to email us your questions, attlivestream@gmail.com.
Yes, and the podcast, be sure to tell a friend about it, and that if they don't have time to watch the show, they can always catch us on the replay or on the podcast, Spotify, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. And be sure to hit that subscribe button so that you can receive alerts when we post new things. So I think that's it. We do want to thank everyone for your support. Please share the show, like the show, comment on the show. That helps us get the word out. And if you would like to financially support us,
Yes.
we would certainly welcome that. We appreciate all of your support for us.
Before we go, I just read Annette's comment. It says,
Yeah.
the mob makes me want to do nothing for anyone. And Annette, my encouragement to you would be that despite the mob, doing something for one will be amazing and potentially life-changing for that one person. So, yeah.
Great way to end the show.
All right.
Thank you, everyone. God bless.
Bye.
There's nothing